Good evening. Welcome to Neighbors on Call 2019 kickoff event. I'm Susan Blunt. Can you hear me? Yes. And this is Becca Zirkin. We are the directors. We are the directors of Neighbors on Call, and we are thrilled to have you all here with us tonight for our very special conversation with the chair of the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez. What an honor to have him here with us tonight. For those of you who don't know, NoC is an all-volunteer grassroots group that started in 2016. We're not part of the Democratic Party, but we are proud Democrats. Now here's what we do. We advocate for progressive policy in Raleigh and against the bad stuff. In the past 2 years, we have lobbied, rallied, protested, and spoken out, supporting the calls to action of established advocacy organizations like the North Carolina NAACP and Moms Demand Action. And we also work really hard to send more Democrats to Raleigh. We truly appreciate the optimism and energy here, which is just all over the place. It's wonderful here in this room, and how much hard work this crowd has put into advancing progressive ideals in North Carolina. Volunteers with Neighbors on Call, more than 300 of us, knocked about 15,000 doors in the past 2 years in our precincts and in flippable North Carolina House districts. We're very proud of our collective hard work and that we helped break the supermajority. That's a number of you here tonight are precinct and party chairs, and we appreciate your leadership in our neighborhoods to get us organized. Some of the candidates we canvassed for are here. I wish it was possible to find you in the crowd, but I know you are here tonight, along with several of our elected officials. We thank you for fighting the good fight on our behalf. We are all here tonight because we want representation in North Carolina that reflects voters' values, and we're ready to put in the work to make it happen.
For Neighbors on Call 2019 is no time to rest. We are ramping up now for 2020. NoC is laser focused on flipping at least one chamber of the North Carolina General Assembly in 2020 so that Democrats have a hand in redistricting following the 2020 census. The best That is our best avenue to fair representation in North Carolina for the next 10 years. Tonight, we have lots of questions for Chairman Perez, and we know you do too. Please write your questions on a note card. You were given one as you came in. I have one somewhere. Our chapter leaders will collect them in about a half hour, and we'll get to as many as we can. Your first question may be, what? How did NoC get Tom Perez to come? The answer is that we asked Diane Robertson. And she made it happen. A lifelong activist, Diane has been engaged as a community volunteer since moving to Carrboro in 1991. She is a mother of 3 and has 2 adorable grandsons who are strong motivation for her civic engagement. She has served as North Carrboro Precinct Chair since 2008. Is a member of the North Carolina Democratic Party Executive Committee, Chair of the Chapel Hill Carrboro NAACP Political Action Committee, and on the boards of Democracy NC and Planned Parenthood South Atlanta. In 2012, she joined the DNC National Finance Team, She currently serves as a National Deputy Finance Chair and is a member of the DNC Women's Leadership Forum Steering Committee. We thank you, Diane, for everything you do for North Carolina. And for making this happen tonight. And we'll turn it over to you to introduce Chairman Perez.
Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is take a picture of this amazing crowd. Y'all look great. Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Susan. Well, hello neighbors, and you really are my neighbors because I live 2 miles from here. So this is my town. Before I introduce Tom, I want to ask everyone here to give yourselves a big round of applause. Members of Neighbors on Call, volunteers, along with donors, your grassroots engagement and support brought the blue wave to campaigns across North Carolina. And that is why I am so proud to have Tom and his staff here tonight. I especially want to recognize and thank Becca, Susan, and Andrea, and the entire leadership team of Neighbors on Call, affectionately known as NoC. You all have built one of the most effective grassroots organizations that I have witnessed. You conceived and birthed Neighbors on Call, and with all of you, it is maturing very nicely indeed. And I really mean that. When they asked me, could I do this, I would never have thought to make this ask if it weren't for the fact that you all deserved it. You all did the hard work and proved what a great organization and great leadership team and vision you all have. Your work to engage hundreds of volunteers to knock on doors, show up for demonstrations, bring voice to the General Assembly, and support the work of the Democratic Party to #SaveDemocracy has been inspiring, and most important, it has been effective. It is an honor to work with all of you. So now, I am very excited to welcome and introduce the chair of the new DNC, and I emphasize the word new. Tom Perez, who took on the leadership in 2017 at a time when his unique skills were just what was needed in the wake of November 2016. When Tom campaigned to be chair, I went to Atlanta to support his election. He had a vision for the DNC that was all about building the party infrastructure to win elections at every level, in every town across the country. He understood that this would not be an easy turnaround job. So I am grateful that the community organizer, U.S. civil rights attorney, U.S. labor secretary, husband, father, and basketball coach put his lifetime work as a public servant to build the new DNC. Last November, we certainly saw the results of this vision with the most diverse slate of newly elected officials in history. Election night 2018 was a huge step toward making our government at every level more representative of our nation's diversity. That we had these important electoral gains at all levels around the country in 2017 and 18 is in large part because of Tom's vision and his leadership at the DNC. His staff has connected directly with state parties, especially our own party here in North Carolina, with campaigns and grassroots allies across the country to build that winning ecosystem. That he is with us tonight in Carrboro, the Paris of the Piedmont, is proof of his commitment to understanding to support the work that made election night possible. We can only sustain these wins by organizing in 2019 for 2020. I need not remind anyone in this room that for us, election 2018 is still in process. But I am confident many of you in this room will help to bring the 9th Congressional District, make the 9th Congressional District blue, and send Dan McCready to join Congressman Price and our delegation in D.C. We're all waiting for that election. So let me close with Tom's words from election night and then turn this over to you. Over the last year, the new DNC built an infrastructure to compete everywhere by investing in our state parties, data and tech, and expanding our ground game like never before. We got back to basics and reinstituted a 50-state strategy that helped us win in the past and regain the trust of voters all across the country. But we didn't do this alone. We worked closely with our progressive partners to elect leaders with our shared values, and we are just getting started. We're going to keep organizing, mobilizing, and fighting. We're going to keep investing in Democrats from the school board to the Oval Office, and that's how we're going to take back the Senate and the White House in 2020, and I will add the North Carolina General Assembly. Thank you.
Can we give it up for Diane one more time, please? All right, thank you, Diane. If you look up the term serial activist in the dictionary, you will see a picture of Diane Robertson. If you look up serial activist, you will also see a picture of Becca and Susan. Thank you for your leadership. If I could ask all the elected officials who are here, all the party officials who are here, and all folks who are running for something to raise your hand. I see the architect of the great strategy in the House. Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Greg, for everything you've done. Let's raise your hand one more time. Y'all didn't do that. Great. Let's give it up for all of them. Okay? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you to my friend and colleague, Wayne Goodwin. We have at least one DNC member. Where are you? Right here, right in front of me. Oh, there you are. Thank you so much, Sheila, for being here. There's someone else, three other people I just want to quickly acknowledge. These are my first cousins. Right here, okay? Susie and Margie. My mother was number 8 of 9. Their dad was number 7 of 9. We came here from the Dominican Republic. We got kicked out because there was a brutal dictator, and our grandfather spoke out because it was the right thing to do in the middle of the Great Depression. And that's how we got to the United States. I think our immigrant tradition is what has always made America great, and I know I speak for my cousins in saying that as well. So thanks for being here. And there's a guy in the back of the room who I'm not surprised is in the back of the room that I need to say something about. His name is Ted Shaw. Ted, could I just trouble you to raise your hand for 1 second? If you all, I am a civil rights lawyer. Civil rights is the unfinished business of America. I work for a guy named Ted Kennedy and a guy named Barack Obama, among others, the privilege of a lifetime. And they taught me that America could never truly be America unless everybody has access to opportunity, no matter where you were born, no matter what your first language, no matter what religion you worship, if any, no matter who you love. America is that land of opportunity. That's what civil rights are about. And I think of myself as a student of the movement. The gentleman in the back was a general and continues to be a general. in the civil rights movement, and you have him right in your backyard. He taught me so much about what it means to fight for opportunity. He taught me so much about the fact that civil rights is about, we fall down, but we get up. We get up stronger and more resolute. I learned from people like Ted. I learned from people like Ted Shaw and Ted Kennedy. I learned from people like Barack Obama, who said when we went to mark the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the most important word in our democracy is a simple two-letter word. That first word, we. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. We understood, our founding fathers understood that our union that they created was imperfect. And it was the collective power of we that corrected the original sin of slavery. It was the collective power of we that brought us the suffragette movement. It was the collective power of we that brought us the labor movement, the single greatest force for middle-class security that this nation has seen, the labor movement. They gave us the weekend. It was this collective power of we that brought us the civil rights movement, that brought us the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which parenthetically was first introduced in 1948. Civil rights is about persistence. Ted Shaw taught me that. Ted Kennedy taught me that. It was the collective power of we that brought us the Fair Housing Act in 1968. It was the collective power of we that brought opportunity for people with disabilities. It was the collective power of we that has brought opportunity for our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. And folks, it is the collective power of we that is the most important force as we confront a democracy on fire. My fundamental message to you is thank you. Because, you know what, folks? The question presented on January 21st, 2017 was that remarkable event, and thank you to, no offense to the men, but thank you to the women in this room, okay? Women led the resistance. Women marched not just across America, but around the world.
Yeah.
And they said, Mr. President, this is not going to last long. Mr. President, today we will resist, tomorrow we will persist. And the question presented that many people asked on January 21st, 2017 was this going to be a moment or a movement? Well, folks, 2 years later, this is a movement moment, and you are part of it. You've been there every step of the way. I am really proud of the work that we've done as a party in partnership with our state party partners. I have a number of colleagues from the DNC. I'd like them just to raise their hand. They've been working tirelessly. I see Joe Nay. See that woman in the red in the back? She spent the 5-week run-up to the 2018 election working with a former boss of hers, a woman named Stacey Abrams. I will tell you, folks, that woman in the back got game. And I will tell you, folks, as someone who sued the former Secretary of State of Georgia, he and the former Secretary of State of Kansas were the voter suppression leaders of the Republican Party. I have no doubt I will go to my grave understanding that Stacey Abrams, if that election had been fair, would be the governor of Georgia. I have no doubt about that. None whatsoever. But we fall down and we get up. And that's what you did, folks. I think your governor, I talked to him today, and he said to me, please say thank you to this group. Because, he won by 10,000 votes. Y'all knocked on 15,000 doors this year. And I know that wasn't 2016, but you replicate that. Anyone know a woman named Shelley Simons? Shelley Simons would be a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, but for one thing.
One vote.
She lost the coin flip.
Yeah.
If you are ever wondering whether your work matters, let me give you her number. Because she will tell you, it matters a lot. And what I am most proud of is not simply the work that we did at the DNC. I will be honest with you. I walked into a place that was broken. We had to rebuild our infrastructure, and we had to rebuild trust. And we're doing both those things. We rebuilt our infrastructure by investing in organizing. We rebuilt our infrastructure by changing our mission statement. The old DNC was all about just electing the president every 4 years. The new Democratic National Committee and Democratic Party is about electing Democrats from the school board to the Oval Office to the state legislature. And folks, I have every confidence that that gentleman right over there is going to be in the House majority in 2021 right here in the great state of North Carolina. But if I may speak for Greg and his colleagues, which he didn't give me permission to do, I am equally confident that he can't do it, that we can't do it without you. And that's when I talk about what I am proud of. I'm proud of our investments in organizing. I'm proud of the fact that Doug Jones is a U.S. Senator. I'm proud of the fact that black women, the backbone of this Democratic Party, gave that victory to Doug Jones. 98% of African American women. 98%. I'm proud of the fact that, you know what, in Virginia House of Delegates, it was 66 to 34 on January 21st, 2017. And election night, it was 51 to 49. Elections have consequences, folks. And you know what, folks? I am confident that this year in Virginia, it's going to be a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate because of people like you up there. I am absolutely certain of that. And one of the things I am most proud of here, you see, I had the privilege of working in the same division Ted worked in, slightly later than Ted. You might be mad at me for saying that. But, you know, we have a mutual friend. When I was the Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights in the Clinton administration, and I was proud to work in that administration, there were two of us who were deputies. And my fellow deputy is a woman I think y'all know. Her name is Anita Earls. Because she's on the Supreme Court. You all know that we go too. Anita Earls has got game. She's got game big time. And I love the fact we have another retirement. The Chief Judge, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And you know what, folks? That's 6 to 1. But you know what? Don't settle for 6 to 1. That one is up for election next year. Let's make it 7 to 1. I like that. Because you know what, folks? When I say school board to the Oval Office, I mean it. Last year in Wisconsin, there was a race in April for state Supreme Court. The old DNC had a faith-based approach to races like that. We pray for her, but we wouldn't do much else. The new DNC is organizing early. By the way, I am a person of prayer. I say that. I was at St. Camilla's Church yesterday. I believe in prayer. But I do not believe that prayer is the sole force of winning elections. I believe in shoe leather. I believe in technology investments. I believe in voter protection, okay? I just wanted to clarify that, okay? But I'll tell you, so she's running for state Supreme Court in Wisconsin. The election was April of last year. Again, the old DNC waited until that 3-month sprint. The new DNC is a 12-month-a-year, every-year party. And her election campaign slogan was, "Not a penny from the NRA." And the question, and this was, you remember where we were last year in April, in the aftermath of an unspeakable tragedy. Another one, after another one. And I thought two things when I saw that. Number one, that's courageous. Number two, will it prove to be politically suicidal in a state that values its Second Amendment freedoms? And I respect those freedoms as well, but they can coexist with common sense gun safety. And you know what, folks? We organized everywhere. We bought up 70,000 cell phones And by the way, we bought up 100 million cell phones across the country and gave 3 million to your party so that you can talk to people. Because I don't know about you, but this is how my 3 kids consume news. It's on their gadget. And if you don't communicate, that's not going to work. You're not going to get them elected. And so what we did was, with about 70,000 voters in the Milwaukee area, we sent out text messages saying, not a penny from the NRA. Voters who were sporadic. And then we worked with the local board of elections to make sure that these people were on the rolls. Because you see, in Milwaukee County, they had 2 sets of books. They had books, and by the way, they were books. They were books. They had a set of books of people who were eligible to vote, or registered to vote, and had actually voted in recent elections, and a separate set of books of people who were eligible to vote, but hadn't voted. And the key, and this is why voter protection matters, building relationships matters. The key was making sure they brought both sets of books. Because if you knock on doors and you get sporadic voters persuaded to come out and vote, and they show up, and they're not on the list, that voter won't come back. For good reason. And so we thought, best case scenario, she might win by a point or 2. She won by 11 points, folks. And she's now on the state Supreme Court of Wisconsin. That's why Anita made history here. And you're going to make more history. And we're going to do it together. Because that's what it's all about. People ask me a number of times, Tom, the proliferation of new organizations, is that a threat to the DNC? That's a thrill, not a threat. Folks, we're all in the same orchestra. We may play different instruments, but we're all in that orchestra of opportunity. And the bigger the orchestra, the better the music. When you're out there knocking on 15,000 doors as you did, that's lightning in a bottle. Because as my former boss and mentor, Joe Biden, has often said, all politics is personal. We lost a lot of elections because we stopped talking to people. We stopped showing up. We stopped leading with our values. I was in an African American church in Detroit, and someone said to me early on in my tenure here, you got to stop showing up every 4th October, pretending that you care. That person had a point. When we organize everywhere, when we talk about our values, and we as Democrats believe that health care is a right for all and not a privilege for a few. When we talk about that value, and when we talk about it everywhere, that's how we win. When we talk about the fact that education is the great equalizer, and we need to invest in public education in every zip code, that's how we win. When we talk about the fact that women's reproductive health is women's economic empowerment, and we must protect those fundamental rights, that's how we win, folks. When we talk about the need to build more schools and less prisons, that's how we win. And those values, they resonate everywhere. Folks, pre-existing conditions are not limited to Republicans. They're not limited to urban America. They're not limited to a certain race or ethnicity. Diabetes doesn't discriminate. Anyone know someone who's diabetic? Have you talked to them about how much insulin costs and how much it's gone up? And how little this administration has done? I'm not talking much about this administration, because y'all know that already. Our democracy's on fire. And the reason we're winning is because we're talking about what we stand for. And when we continue to do that, we win. We win here because it doesn't matter what county you're in. People need access to health care. It doesn't matter what county you're in. You want that neighborhood school to equip your child with the skills they need to compete. Doesn't matter what county you're in. We want to make sure that if you work a full-time job, you ought to be able to feed your family. That's a basic fundamental right. And that's what the Democratic Party has been fighting for. And I firmly believe the reason that we've been winning is that we've been fielding great candidates. Thank you. We've been fielding them everywhere. We've been partnering with everyone here. And we've been leading with our values. Listening. Good leaders are good listeners. We didn't do enough listening at the DNC. We've done a lot of it since. I've learned a lot. Some of it's harsh truths. But unlike Jack Nicholson, we can handle the truth. And we must. And I come to you with unrelenting optimism, which may seem ironic in this moment where our democracy is on fire. But folks, I come to you with optimism because I've seen the collective power of we at work. I'm so excited to have a member of Congress from Oklahoma, but I'm not surprised. I'm so excited that the governor of Kansas, Laura Kelly, is a Democrat. But folks, I'm not surprised. And by the way, the last time we flipped this many governor's residences in one cycle, 7, this past November, last time we did that was 1982, folks, 1982. We now have a majority of state attorneys general. You helped flip 10 seats in your House, and was it 6 in the Senate? We need 6 more to take the House, and we will do that. We need 4 more, 4 plus 1 to get the majority in the Senate. I was in law school, correct, because math escaped me. But the remedial one I could do. And folks, just so you know you're part of a movement, on those state legislative seats, there was a net gain of almost 400 seats nationally. 8 chambers, if you take Washington from 2017 as well, 8 chambers flipped from Republican to Democrat. Equally importantly is breaking the supermajority in places like North Carolina. Hugely important, folks. We win 41 seats in 10 chambers. In the coming 2 years, we flipped those 10 chambers. And folks, we picked a terrible year in 2010 to get defeated by a lot. Because it shellacked, thank you. Because it had consequences for a decade. But folks, the Democratic Party is back. We're back with our partners. We're leading with our values. My favorite photo of 2018 was the photo of the newly elected Democrats of the House of Representatives, juxtaposed with the photo of the newly elected Republicans. You know, I learned this term in law school. It's called res ipsa loquitur. You know, the action speaks for itself. Just look at those photos and say, res ipsa, we're done. But we're not done. We got a lot more work to do. We have a net gain of 40. North Carolina is going to make it a net gain of 41 in the U.S. House of Representatives. But we cannot take that for granted. There's going to be a lot of focus, folks, and understandably, on the upcoming primary election cycle for president. And obviously, we have a lot of focus there. Our job is twofold. Number one, to make sure the process is fair in fact and fair in perception to everybody. That's what we will do. We've already announced our primary debate schedule. We're holding 12 debates beginning in June. We did that before we knew, and by the way, if you're wondering, June, man, that's soon. Debates have started as early as February of the year before. So we're in about the middle of the pack, in case you're wondering. I was watching you. I'm a trained trial lawyer. I was watching your body language. You were saying to me in your body language, June, what are you thinking? I thought I heard you say that. But I didn't mean to single you out. And thank you for being here. But I'll tell you, you know, we may, and we probably will have a double-digit field of candidates. That is a first-class problem to have, folks, because we have a deep bench in this party. 4 women already in the race. That's what America's about. We will have a remarkably diverse field of candidates. And if we end up having 14 candidates who meet the threshold for debates, we've already announced we'll do it 2 nights in a row, and we'll draw lots. So it'll be random for the first 2. Because if there's 14 people in the race, 13 aren't going to make it to the mountaintop. And our job is to make sure that every single person the candidate and their supporters feel like their candidate got a fair shake, because they in fact did. And folks, in these debates, they're going to be talking about the issues. We're not talking about hand size. We're talking about health care. That's what we're going to be doing. This is a remarkable fact. Did you know that there was not one question in the Democratic debate in 2016 about climate? That is remarkable to me. That will not happen in 2020. That will not happen. And so, job one is to make sure that the process is fair to everyone, fair in fact and fair in perception. We reformed our superdelegate process because we wanted to give power back to the people. We wanted to make sure the grassroots were electing our candidates, and we did exactly that. And our second equally important imperative is to make sure that whoever wins the nomination is handed an infrastructure that enables them to succeed. I said many, many times, Donald Trump can't win because he doesn't have a ground game. And I was nominally correct.
Yeah, right.
But he didn't need a ground game. And here's why. The RNC, the Republican ecosystem infrastructure, understood that success required a strong RNC infrastructure and a strong Koch brothers infrastructure. There were 81 field offices of the RNC in Florida alone. They were knocking on doors starting in 2013. They didn't know who the nominee was, but they were knocking on doors, finding Republicans who were off the grid. They were doing what you've been doing. And they're doing what you need to continue to do. Because I worked at the Justice Department for over a decade as a trial lawyer, doing civil rights cases. I learned as a trial lawyer and I learned as a marathon runner. Trials are not won in the courtroom, they're won in your preparation. You don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, I gotta run a marathon today. That seems cool. You prepare for it. And that's what we have to do now. That's why you may be wondering, it is January of 2019. Why am I knocking on doors? Because that's the difference between winning and losing. I am so proud of the partnerships that have been out there. I am so proud of the work that so many folks have done. I remember going to Selma for the 50th anniversary. And Selma, you know, we read about John Lewis and the heroes that everybody knows about. But Selma was also about the unsung heroes. That's who you are. Unsung heroes, first responders, serial activists. And I'm guessing, I have 3 kids. And I'm guessing that my motivation and your motivation are pretty aligned. Because I asked the question on November the 9th, 2016, which parenthetically was my middle kid's 18th birthday. I know what you're thinking, we should have induced. But it didn't dawn on us 18 years earlier. But I asked the question, what America do we want to leave for them? That's what it's about. You know, the moral compact of this nation, the social compact, has always been, we leave our kids' lives, we leave our kids a little better off than we were. And that's been called into question. And we have the most dangerous president in American history. I have no doubt that historians will study this moment alongside the Know-Nothing movement of the mid-19th century, the Chinese Exclusion Act of the early 20th century, the internment of Japanese Americans in the World War II period, and the McCarthy era and this era. They will all be studied together. And here's what they all have in common. They ended. You know what? And why did they end? They ended, and I end here, and look forward to taking your questions, for the same reason I said. The collective power of we. These are the hardest days right now, because the election of 2020 seems far away. Boy, it's going to come out like tomorrow. And that's why I'm so inspired to be here with all of you. I'm so inspired by your leadership. No one's getting paid here, or if you are, we ought to call the DA. But what you understand is that, you know, not only is health care and all those other things I mentioned on the ballot, but our democracy's on the ballot. our democracy as we know it. I was just in Europe doing some stuff, and I talked to some folks that I used to work with when I was labor secretary. And they said to me, Tom, you know, our world is resilient. We can withstand one term of this maniac. But I'm not sure we can withstand two. You know, the withdrawal from Paris doesn't take effect until October 2020. So when we elect a Democrat, we can undo that. That doesn't mean it hasn't done harm. Quite the contrary. But their point was, we're resilient, but we're not 8 years resilient. And that's why when you're thinking about this, when you're asking yourself, darn, it's cold out. Well, I'm here to tell you, I grew up in Buffalo. This is home. You know, when you've got the sniffles, you know, just think about our kids and our grandkids and our democracy. Because we have a fighting chance to take the House. And I'm here to tell you, yes, we are going to be focused on re-electing Roy Cooper and electing a Democratic president and making sure Tom Tillis is a one-term senator. We can do all that. We can absolutely do all that. But you know what, folks? We are not going to lose sight of the fact that this is a 10-year election again. And having majority people like Greg is a huge difference. That will enable us to ensure that we got fair maps. Yes. And as a result of that, will enable us to ensure that we expand Medicaid, that we give opportunity everywhere. So I wanted to come here to say again, thank you. Because your work's heroic. If people ask you what you do tonight, I was at a meeting of the movement. Because this truly is a movement moment. And I'm kind of obsessed with Hamilton. I've only seen it like 4 times. and there's a song there that, you know, history has its eyes on us. Yes. It really does at the moment. And history is going to look very kindly on every single person in this room. Because y'all stepped up and continue to step up. And continue to make a difference. One door knock at a time, one call at a time, one engagement at a time. You know, somos los Estados Unidos, no somos los Estados Divididos. We are the United States of America, not the divided States of America. Let's bring that spirit to bear. Let's continue to do that. Let's build a North Carolina that we can be proud of. 2008 was a great year here in election time, and 2020 is going to be an equally great year with your help. Thank you very much.
Chairman Perez, thank you so much. It is a vast understatement to say that we are incredibly honored to have you here with us. Thank you. You talked about a 12-month-a-year party. Can you elaborate on what that looks like to the rank and file like us, even in the off months and the off years, and how the DNC is supporting that?
Great. Well, here's what a 12-month-a-year party meant in 2017. We had an election almost every week. If it's Tuesday, we used to say there's an election somewhere. December 5th, 2017, there was a runoff election for mayor of Atlanta. We got a call about 4 weeks before, bless you. We got a call, bless all of you, by the way. We got a call 4 weeks before from a woman named Keisha Lance Bottoms, now the mayor. I'm behind in my polling. It's a tight race. You know, if you want to elect a Democrat statewide in 2018, you need to make sure you got a Democrat in the city of Atlanta in 2017. And when you have a really good candidate, like we did, we want to work for her. Again, new mission to DNC. What did we do? We bought up about 50,000 cell phone numbers of sporadic voters. We ran an aggressive text messaging campaign. I was in the war room, and one of my colleagues gets a text saying, are you a real person? This is a real story. She calls that person up. Yes, I am. And they have a conversation. Fast forward to a week later, which was 1 week before Doug Jones's race. She wins by 700 votes. And if she were here today, I'm confident she would tell you that we made a difference. That's what it's about. And so what a 12-month-a-year party looks like is that we are constantly investing in infrastructure. Our chief technology officer was the 25th employee at a small company out in the Silicon Valley called Twitter. He built their infrastructure quite literally. He then went from there to a small company called Uber, designed their driverless vehicle program, and then woke up the day after the election like you and me with small children saying our democracy is on fire, I need to help. So we built, one of my goals here, this was a turnaround job, I acknowledged that earlier, one of our goals was to become a destination employer, to attract the best and the brightest talent so we can invest in the infrastructure, so that we can invest in voter protection infrastructure, so that we can make sure we have organizers on the ground, so that we can really lead with our values and address the question I get frequently, which was, what was the message of the Democratic Party? What do you stand for? And so we've been constantly honing those partnerships. We increased our investment in state parties by 1/3. We established a $10 million innovation grant program to promote innovation in 3 areas of vital importance. Base voter engagement, getting out the vote of folks that we just took for granted. Rural engagement, hugely important. And millennial engagement. We're all millennials, it's a state of mind. But there are some who actually fit the definition. And if you look at millennial turnout in 2018, actually go back to 2017. One thing we learned early is that if you have a full-time organizer on a college campus, it's lightning in a bottle. Lightning in a bottle. And that's the thing we did. You know, young people, when Barack Obama was elected president, the most typical millennial voter was a registered Democrat. Now, by almost 10 points, the most typical registered millennial voter is a registered unaffiliated. And so, you know, just saying, you gotta vote Democrat because your old man did, that's not enough. And here's the good news. We're building that values bridge. Because you take climate, you take women's reproductive health, you take just being nice to your neighbor. They're on our side. And that's why we did so well. So a big part of what we're doing now to be a 12-month-a-year party is putting our money where our mouth is, investing in local mayor's races, investing in special elections. And we got three governor's races in 2019. Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi. We can win them all. But we could lose them all. And you know what? We're going to win them all because we got folks like you in all of those states. We got great candidates. And we're already organizing early and organizing everywhere. And we're never going to forget about our mission. I keep looking at Greg. But you know what, folks? You know, that is just so critically important to elect mayors and city council people and school board members and you know, the House of Representatives and the state Senate. Those offices do so much good for so many people. And that's why this is a 12-month-a-year job, because they're quite literally, I could probably think of an election that's taking place tomorrow someday.
Okay, next on our questions is that precinct organizing meetings are coming up in the next few weeks around here. Can you help us connect the dots? So if I go to my precinct meeting, how does that help us win elections?
Well, I talked about our state party partners, but our county parties are equally important. I don't know if there are any county party officials in here. Thank you so much for what you do. I was a local elected official in Maryland. You know, you can't print money in state and local government. You got to solve problems. And folks in the front lines, you go to a local meeting of your county party, and what we're talking about now is how we organize for 2019, how we recruit candidates. I'm hopeful that there are people in this room who are going to be inspired to run. And I'm here to tell you, that would be great. And I'm here to tell you there's a chance you might lose. And I'm going to call you again and say, I hope you'll run a second time. Because you know what? I can show you the Virginia House of Delegates, the 15 people who won, at least 5 had lost before. And they ran again, and they won. So if first you don't succeed, try again. So the local, both the county parties and the state parties are just they're doing all the blocking and tackling. This job may not be sexy, but when you ignore the blocking and tackling, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, a masochist, and we had a lousy year because we had no offensive line. You know, if you're not doing the blocking and tackling, you don't win. And that's a big part of the work that our county parties are doing. It's often tireless, it's often thankless, and it's indispensable. And what we have to do a better job of is making sure we equip them with the tools that they need, and we equip you with the tools that you need. So when you knock on a door, it's actually the person who's on your list. Or you make a call, and the person isn't dead. That's a problem. When you waste a volunteer's time, that's inexcusable. That's why we bought up 100 million cell phone numbers. Actually, we're up to 105. Because that's the method of communication.
Well, we want to say something to the neighbors on call right now, which is that we need to go to our precinct meetings. We know that this is important. We know that this helps us build the party. And so we are asking you to do something right now. You probably noticed that there's a schedule of precinct meetings on the chairs in front of you, and almost everyone in this room should find your precinct listed on it. And you also have a little yellow slip. We're asking you to please fill that out right now to let us know if you can attend your precinct meeting, yes or no, and then to pass them to the right. How does that work? Pass them to the right. Okay, Isabel says pass them to the right.
This is the only thing we're going to be right on tonight. Okay.
And Chairman Perez, we do have a slip for you also.
Excellent.
We don't have Maryland on our precinct list, but we think you maybe know what your precinct is. So as the leader of our party, we hope you'll fill yours out too. And the chapter leaders are going to come around in a minute to take the slips and your question cards.
Yes,
so please pass those to.
Reminder that if you have a question for Chairman Perez, to fill it out on that 4x6 card and pass it along with your yellow slip.
Good question.
Okay, while you're filling out your slips, we want to give special thanks to the Neighbors on Call volunteer crew, about 40 of you who have made this event possible tonight. And a shout out to the Neighbors on Call chapter leaders who are our heart and soul. We love you dearly. Now, after this event tonight, we're all heading over to Tyler's Tap Room, which is just around the corner. We hope all of y'all, I get to say that because I'm a Southern, we hope all of y'all will join us. We've invited Chairman Perez and his entourage to join us too. We'll see if you guys can join us. And what is your precinct?
My precinct is in Tacoma Park, Maryland, sometimes known as the People's Republic of Tacoma Park. And it is actually 78-2, if my memory serves me.
Carrboro, Maryland.
All right.
Yeah, Carrboro, Maryland.
Are we pretty good? We almost got them? All right. While we're finishing up with that, we're going to get back to our questions for Chairman Perez. Thank you very much for doing that, and we'll see you at our precinct meetings. So, you already touched on this, Chairman Perez.
Bryn?
We understand that the DNC is investing a lot in technology, and we as the foot soldiers for the party are investing our personal time contacting voters, as you mentioned before. And so we want to know that our volunteer time is getting the most bang for the buck when we're out there on a Saturday canvassing. And so we just wanted to hear about some other tools that the DNC has underway so that our time is being put to the best use.
Well, in the old days, people knocked on doors with a clipboard.
Yeah.
Some people still do that. But when I was knocking on doors in Georgia for Stacey Abrams, I'm looking at Jonay in the back, the only thing we had was this. Now, what was the tool that you were using in Georgia?
Minivan, we use it.
Everybody, some people drive a minivan, others use a minivan. And that was a pretty remarkable tool because you could input the information in real time. And the thing I want to make sure you know, now I'm speaking on behalf of some of our party officials here, is when you do this and it gets inputted into the voter file, that is indispensable. I mean, the Democratic Party voter file is the best repository on the Democratic side of basic door knocks, phone calls, and the more you know about a voter, the better off you are. This is the Amazonization of America. And by that I mean, past, the basic model of Amazon is they look at your past habits, they have a lot of predictive validity on what you're going to do in the future. That's the same thing with voting. So you get more and more information on people. You understand what they care about. And what we're trying to do is have a more surgical understanding. So we don't send you a gazillion emails about every topic, but have a better understanding of the 3 topics you care about so that we can be more surgical. When we do that, you're more effective.
So here we are. Sorry, okay, thank you, that's wonderful. In terms of,
Sorry.
as we said earlier, we feel a real urgency to flip at least one chamber of the North Carolina General Assembly because of the 10-year impact. That to me is such a big thing, 10-year impact that we will have on fair representation in North Carolina and for the balance of power in the U.S. Congress. But it all comes down to the problem of gerrymandering. Where does North Carolina fit into this national picture of gerrymandering? We seem to be the experts.
Just to put a slightly finer point on it, experts on gerrymandering, experts on voter ID, I could go down the list and I could bring Ted Shaw up here to give a recitation. Yeah, I firmly to my core believe that dark money and gerrymandering, partisan, racial, have been the 2 darkest forces that have brought our democracy to its knees. And it was remarkable that we won 40 seats and will soon win 41 in the House. And what was remarkable about it was in so many districts, we not only had to win, we had to beat the spread in order to succeed. Barack Obama won Pennsylvania in 2012, something like 52 to 48 or 53 to 47, like 5-point spread, something like that. The Democrats won, running in the 18 House seats there, won north of 50% of the votes, 50.5 or 51%, and they won 5 out of 18 seats.
Yeah.
You know that story.
Yes, we do.
I mean, the record is replete here. I forgot the guy, the Republican leader, who said the reason we have 10 out of 13 is I couldn't figure out a way to make it 11. What, isn't that what he said, Ted? Something like that? Okay. And so, the best recipe for this for us right now is to win elections. You do not have the constitutional right to have referenda. If I were in a different state, I would say take it to ballot initiative. That's what they did in Ohio. That's what we did in a number of other states. To the best of my knowledge, you don't have that opportunity to do it here. And so what we have to make sure we do is re-elect Roy Cooper. Can't gerrymander a statewide. They might try. Can't vote here in Durham, or you can't vote in Orange County, or you can't vote in the Black Belt. They'd do it if they could. But that's why, again, on those days where you're feeling a little under the weather, or the weather is looking a little not so great, you got to get out there, because this is truly a 10-year election in 2020. And if we don't have the House and we don't have the governorship, and we're going to have both, that is what it's all about. Then you have such control over redistricting. There's a case in front of the court. It relates to Maryland, my state, and your state. I mean, last year, with a more friendly court, relatively speaking, they declined the opportunity. Some of us thought that maybe Justice Kennedy would, on his way out, do the right thing. He did not. I'm a half full guy, but, we don't have that court. So, if I have low expectations and they exceed it, that'd be great. But, we're gonna find out in June. But we need to prepare for the worst alternatives. And the worst alternative is basically, it's open season and it's the wild, wild west. And the best way to deal with that, if that's what ends up happening, is to just keep winning elections and taking over the House and giving ourselves leverage. This is what it's all about, leverage for the next redistricting cycle. And then making sure we are fighting to ensure that you don't ask questions that are illegal in the census. Folks, you have a 9% Latino population, but they are not voting. We need to count everybody. There's a tremendous opportunity in this state. The judge in New York in the Southern District that just heard this case, and you know who argued that case, Ted? A guy named Matthew Colangelo. Folks, in his opinion, he said Wilbur Ross lied to Congress. And I can tell you, as someone who knows a little bit about voting rights, they didn't need that question for Voting Rights Act enforcement. That is bogus. That is incorrect. And so that's why there's so many things that are important right now. Your advocacy, you mentioned that you not only door knock, but you're engaging in advocacy. This should be a bipartisan issue, making sure there's an accurate count. Because, folks, federal funds flow to your state depending on your count. Republicans are going to need the money too. So that ought to be a bipartisan issue. Sorry to get a little worked up, but that one is just ridiculous. I see too many questions there, so I'll be shorter. I get worked up.
You're not getting going.
No, I'm not going to answer that one.
That's from your cousin.
Come on.
So,
Perez for Perez.
it's especially hard to get fair redistricting when we don't already have fair districts.
Correct.
And on top of that, we now have the voter ID, photo ID law that you were talking about. And so it's an all hands on deck situation for North Carolina here in 2020. And we're worried about how the DNC is going to balance supporting the down ballot campaigns with the top of the ticket in 2020. I'm wondering if you could talk about the strategy for that.
Well, the beauty of it is when you invest in 105 million cell phone numbers, that doesn't simply help the presidential candidates, that helps every candidate. When you invest in technology, or when you purchase consumer information to augment the voter file, so you know more about Diane Robertson. I know, I got a file on her parenthetically. That helps everybody. And that's why I love working at DNC, because the work we do in infrastructure investment, when you build a robust 12-month-a-year millennial engagement strategy, that's not just designed for the president. That's designed for everyone. Door knockers can multitask. You can talk about Roy Cooper and whoever's going to defeat Tom Tillis. You can talk about our next presidential candidate and extol her virtues or his virtues. You can do all of that. And so that's why it's so important. People wonder, why is the party important? Well, the Republicans figured it out. And that's why they invested in such a strong infrastructure. So that's the beauty of our philosophy, our investments in infrastructure. They're designed to help everyone up and down the ballot. And we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you.
We have a lot of questions from the audience here, and in fact, the good thing is you all had a lot of the same questions.
A lot of you all were thinking about the same questions we were thinking about, and we're hitting ones that we've already talked about. So,
Yeah, there's a question about data. And again, our data, we just had a conference in Chicago last week. of the entire data ecosystem. Bunch of new organizations came in place to do tech, DigiDems, all tech for campaigns. And our mission is to become a tentpole in the ecosystem. And so we have bi-weekly calls with everybody in the ecosystem. And what we did last week was we gathered everyone together. And it's, plan, execute, reflect, innovate, get better. And on data, we have an understanding. We need to redouble our efforts in the digital context. Because if you're going to organize in rural America, it's kind of hard to knock on doors in rural America efficiently. But it isn't that hard to engage via your gadget. With the notable caveat that if you don't have broadband, that's a problem. And that's why your Republicans ought to step up. I don't understand why you have so many broadband barren. I do understand. That's why you're doing your job. But this is, if you were to ask me, Tom, at the end of your tenure, what do you want to be your most important accomplishments? In the top 2 list will absolutely be building a data infrastructure that enables us to thrive. We weren't there when I got there. We're better off now than we were before, but we still have more work to do. What do you think about winnability versus beliefs and ideals at this point in the election cycle? I've said oftentimes that we must never conflate unity and unanimity. I'm not asking you to agree with everything I said, everything in the Democratic Party platform, but what I am asking you to consider is that what unites us far exceeds what our differences are. We understand that healthcare is a right for all, not a privilege for a few. We're 90% of the way there thanks to Barack Obama. And we can have a debate about the last 10%. If you go to Switzerland, they use a market-based approach. You go to UK and Canada, they use a different approach. We can have that debate, but that shouldn't define whether you're a good Democrat or a bad Democrat, which fork in the road you choose to get from 90 to 100. And when we remember that, I think it's really important and it's really successful. We had a unity of purpose in this most recent election. We had a unity of purpose in this most recent shutdown. Anyone who wonders about Nancy Pelosi ain't wondering about why she's the Speaker of the House. I am a proud Marylander, and she is a proud Baltimorean. And that's where she learned politics, folks. When you learn politics from your father and your brother and others, that's Nancy Pelosi. But again, that unity of purpose. You don't allow someone to manufacture a crisis to gain leverage and get away with it. That's not right. And that is that unity of purpose. And so I am confident, and I leave you with this as to this question. Senator Kennedy taught me that, Tom, idealism and pragmatism are never mutually exclusive. I remember working on the minimum wage. We wanted to get up to here, but Senator Kennedy had a remarkable capacity to understand that, this is really good. And as Barack Obama has said to me as recently as, a few weeks back, we have to understand, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, better is okay sometimes, okay? A more perfect union. Democracy can be clunky. It doesn't go as fast as I'd like it to or you'd like it to. But I really believe that when we understand that and have that unity of purpose, I don't know who the nominee is, but I can guarantee you that the differences between our next nominee and this president are night and day. And that's why we're going to win, because we're going to have that unity of purpose. Climate change is urgent. You know that because you live here in North Carolina and you've seen it. What are we going to do? Number one is acknowledge that science matters. Acknowledge that facts matter. What disturbs me as much as anything about the climate discussion, Roger Stone, all of these things, is that we can never allow the normalization of lying. We can never allow the normalization of things like climate denial. Just because you say something 40 times, if it was a lie the first time, it's a lie the 40th time. And this is remarkable. I mean, we see the evidence every single day is out there about climate. And one of the most important things we have to do as we figure out a plan to combat this is make sure everybody has a seat at the table. Everybody who's affected. Make sure the unions have a seat at the table. Make sure our environmental brothers and sisters have a seat at the table. Make sure people living in inner cities that have been in totally screwed from time to time, all too frequently, by environmental racism, have a seat at the table. We've got to make sure everybody has a seat at the table so that we can devise a plan that addresses this imperative in a way that's inclusive.
How about a crash program like the Manhattan Project?
That's what we're doing. I agree with you. And that's why there's so much discussion about this right now. Will you support Medicare for all instead of everyone deserves health care? Will you support the Green New Deal and free public higher education? Again, this is what I'm getting at. Folks, I worked for Senator Kennedy. Healthcare was the cause of his lifetime. I'm proud to have worked for him. I'm proud to have worked for Barack Obama. And the question I have with Medicare for all, the question I have with all of the healthcare, just to use one of the examples, is if I'm one of the 10% who doesn't have healthcare, the question presented is, how long do I need to wait for us to move forward with a plan that will give me good health care, access, quality access, and cost? Those are the three pillars of health care. And so that's the question presented. And you know what? I have friends who are passionately in favor of a single payer. I have friends who are passionately in favor of replicating the Swiss model, which is a market-based approach that has 100% coverage. I have friends who are passionately in favor of a variant of what they do in UK and Canada. And my honest answer is I don't know which one is which. But I would respectfully submit that this cannot be the defining issue as to whether you're a Democrat or not. We all believe that health care is indeed a right for all and not a privilege for a few. We are the party that's fighting to make sure if you have a pre-existing condition, you have coverage. I want to get from 90 to 100, but here's the reality right now. They want to take us from 90 to 60. And so we've got to fight that battle while we simultaneously move forward. And that is the imperative of the moment. And I've talked to a lot of labor leaders who have negotiated health care in collective bargaining. And they say to me, Tom, wait a minute. Are you telling me I have to give up my health care for something else? I don't want to do that. And so this is another example of where we've got to make sure we get everybody around the table. And the good news is that our values are so aligned. There's nobody around the table who's saying we need to make sure it's harder for people to get coverage. Or we like the monopoly that the pharmaceutical industry has that enables them to gouge us. We're all trying to fight for what's right. And as long as, it's really, I think, important to respect the fact that there are indeed multiple pathways to this Holy Grail. We all want to get to the Holy Grail. We all want to get there as fast as possible. I quite honestly don't know what the fastest way to get to that Holy Grail is.
How about the Green
Yes,
New
Bill.
Deal? How about the Green New
Yeah,
Deal?
and again, as I said before, there are a host of discussions right now in Congress about how we address climate change, and that is one of them. And the members of the House who are engaged in this are people that have both deep roots in it and remarkable savvy and passion. So we have to understand that, and I think they also have an understanding of the fact that we got to make sure that every affected stakeholder has that seat at the table so that we can reduce our reliance on fossil fuels as soon as possible. That's exactly what we're doing. What is the key piece of that the DNC needs to support at the state and the federal level? Well, again, I work for Senator Kennedy. You know, this issue touched him exceedingly personally. And when I hear Republicans in the aftermath of every senseless gun activity say, my thoughts and prayers, stop praying, because that's just bogus. That's not what you're doing. I mean, in 1994, as part of the crime bill, there was an assault weapons ban. You know, you look at the United States relative to the rest of the world, and the incidence of gun violence is off the charts. Common sense gun safety and Second Amendment freedoms can coexist.